So day 2 of the Super 8 action at the 20 World Cup has come to an end. Technically this was the first day because yesterday's opening fixture was washed out, and let me start with the big game of the day, which was India versus South Africa in Ahmedabad, and India were completely outclassed by the Saffers. They batted first and were actually in a bit of trouble, I would say, at 23 for 3 at one stage. And then you had Miller and Brevis join hands and take the game a bit deep with a great partnership, and the way they accelerated after consolidating was really good. It was Miller who exploded at the start, and then once Brevis was set, he too got into the act. And once Brevis fell, to be honest, the innings again kind of was derailed a bit. I really like the way they took on Varun Chakravarti. He's not used to being targeted specifically from that bowling attack, but he was absolutely taken down by David Miller, and then you saw him kind of lose control, and I've never seen him go that wayward, but he did bowl a few wides and was all over the place by the end of his spell. So I think that was a good strategy. And to be honest, in general, I felt that South Africa had done their homework in all aspects, be it from the very start where they won the toss and opted to bat first, even though everybody knows that chasing is always the better option in India because you never know when the dew comes. But they knew what they were doing. They knew that the pitch would slow down and there won't be much dew. So that's where they really did well. And also they started their second innings with Markram himself, because they've seen that India have all of the top three as left-handers and they struggle against right-arm off-spin. You saw Pakistan do it first, and Netherlands followed, and so did the South Africans. And it's very weird that Indians have fallen to this trap in all of these attempts, which is a bit concerning if you ask me. It was Abhishek Sharma who scored 3 ducks on the bounce, and today it was Ishan Kishan. South Africa finished strong in the first innings, and I think Tristan Stubbs was very good when he took down Hardik Pandya in the final over. I think India were decent with their catching, but their fielding was a bit hit or miss, and that too has been a concern for quite a while with this Indian side. And obviously when they came out to bat, I didn't expect them to be this down or this away from competing. I genuinely felt that India would go on to chase this quite comfortably, but Ishan Kishan fell early. Tilak Verma has been hugely disappointing in this campaign, and this was probably the tipping point for me, because there was, I won't say it was a needless shot, but the execution was absolutely poor. You knew that you had to get going early on, but definitely that was not the right shot. And then Abhishek as well, though he got a few runs today, 15 or 16 runs, but the amount of swings and misses that he had over there, I think he's just a bit too desperate to get going in this tournament. And we all were quite relaxed for a while, especially myself, that he hasn't gotten runs, but I counted that as law of averages and he'll come back to form in the important fixtures. But seeing the way he batted today, I think we got an idea of his form for the first time in this tournament, because he hadn't given us a chance to analyze his form because he got out so early. And today when I saw him bat, he looked very, very desperate for those sixes and runs, and he wasn't comfortable trying to see the ball and hit the ball. He had his shots in his mind, and if the ball wasn't in his desired spot, he didn't really think of changing his shots. He just went with the flow. So I would be a bit worried. More than the 3 ducks, this innings worries me more about Abhishek Sharma. And of course Surya Kumar Yadav as well tried to stick in, but the lack of shots he has for length balls in front of the wicket is a bit concerning for me. I know you can use the pace and kind of play most of your shots behind the wicket on good pitches, but on a slow track like this you will be found out. And it's not the first time that teams have targeted him in this fashion, especially the way he got out as well kind of summed up his entire innings. He was trying to use the pace, but the only thing being there was no pace. So it was almost impossible to generate pace and hit the ball behind the wicket. So I don't understand if he understands this, because when you have been consistently being peppered with this sort of a plan by various teams, at some point you have to adapt. And do you have the capacity to adapt and play other shots, or you have been completely exposed? That's something he has to think about. And I think after that, once they tried to take it deep to keep wickets in hand and then hit later on, I think that was the strategy, but neither did they hit nor could they keep wickets in hand, and they were in a bit of a sticky situation. And I think once Surya got out, it was very difficult for them to come back, and then they just let go of the game. Washington Sundar, I've seen many people often criticize him for being selected ahead of Akshar Patel. I don't think he has got anything to do with that. It's more of the management and their decision to play him. But to drop your vice captain and one of your most reliable players just because there are a couple of matchups going against him, I find that a bit weird as a reason. There must be some other reason for sure why they didn't go with Akshar Patel, and they have just passed it on to us stating this reason, because there's no way you drop your vice captain and someone like Akshar Patel, who's as versatile a player as you can get. And I know Washington Sundar had that matchup, but I mean, how could you not think of the fact that if De Kock and Rickleton get out early on, then you're again left with the right-handers, and then there's no point of Washington Sundar, and Akshar Patel can actually come in. If you were planning to bowl Washington Sundar in the power play or with the new ball, then it made sense to make that change, but definitely you weren't going to do that when you have got Arshdeep and Bumrah and Hardik Pandya as your new ball bowler. So there's no way you're going to give the new ball to Sundar. Then you might as well have gone with Akshar Patel, who's a much more superior player in general, because there are no matchups other than those two there. I know David Miller is one, but he plays spin well regardless of whether it's Washington or Akshar. Definitely he wouldn't have a problem against Washington, and I think that's where they messed up. Not to say that they lost the game because of that choice, but it goes a long way in kind of showing the way the management is thinking, and I think that's a decision that they really need to ponder about. So India were completely outplayed, and that leaves them in a bit of a weird situation considering the Super 8s. They are now last placed for sure, but the net run rate is minus 3.8, which has taken a massive hit today, and they will need to win big against Zimbabwe and West Indies. And for them to not have a worry about the net run rate, they would need South Africa to win both the remaining games so that they go through, and then India will just have to defeat Zimbabwe and West Indies and they are through. So I think they've put themselves into a sticky situation here. They did not analyze the conditions well enough, the batters, and I think they have to play some good cricket now, and there are no more slip-ups they can afford to have in this tournament. Talking about the first game of the day, Sri Lanka versus England, to be honest, very similar script, albeit different conditions. England batted first and kind of struggled in their own innings and got to 146, which is a decent score, but at the time I wasn't quite sure because the pitch looked good, to be honest, and I felt that Sri Lanka bowled well and England batted poorly, and hence they could get to just 146. Phil Salt finally played a longish innings after his freakish nature of getting out in the 30s or early 20s. He finally got to his 50 and batted for more than 10 overs, and you could see that he's not used to batting for that long because he was absolutely tired and dead from inside after just a few overs out there. I think other than that, there weren't many notable contributions with the bat. I think they ran very poorly between the wickets. Tom Banton was run out and they almost had another one there, if not for a very bizarrely poor throw. So England got to 146, and then Sri Lanka pretty much the same script as the night game, just in an opposite way, because while India were a bit erratic with their thinking by completely shutting stock and going slow after losing a couple of wickets, Sri Lanka went in the opposite way, and even after losing a couple of early wickets, they just kept trying to hit their way out of trouble. But in those conditions, that was the worst possible thing they could do, because you just had to stick in there, have one partnership, and basically if you batted 20 overs, you were going to win because of the amount of runs they needed. But they just kept throwing wickets away, especially the Pawan Ratnayake. I really like him a lot for the way he bats, but that shot really has left a lasting impression on me, and I won't be able to see him in the same way as before. And of course, you saw Kumar Sangakkara being very, very vocal about Kamil Mishara. I don't know if he was being made the scapegoat here or he was genuinely annoyed by that, but he did kind of ruin the momentum a bit, but I won't say he did worse than the rest of the batters. They are equally to be blamed, and I think even after being absolutely knackered for about the first 15 overs, they still had the situation at about 66 to win in 30 balls, which in today's day and age is very much possible. And you had, I think, Dasun Shanaka, who had hit a couple of boundaries out there, so I was still a bit hopeful. But then after the drinks break, I believe Shanaka holed out in the deep, another great catch in the outfield. You've seen so many of them, and after that they just bowed out. So I think Will Jacks, he won his third Player of the Match award in this World Cup itself, which is unbelievable. There are a few people who have not won those many across multiple World Cups. And here he is. He did it twice with the bat and now with the ball. Adil Rashid wasn't needed much at all. And I think England played their first proper game in this World Cup only today. Though their batting was more than the batting, their decision making while batting was a bit weird, but I think they did play much better in the group stage and look good to qualify, though that group is a bit tricky. But I think the washout in yesterday's game has ensured that England look comfortable now. They might need another win out of the next two games and they're pretty much through. So tomorrow we have got another game, of course, Zimbabwe taking on West Indies. It's a big game for both the sides because they have a chance to go ahead of India if one of the team wins with a big net run rate boost as well. That would ring a few more alarms in the Indian camp, because that would mean that one of Zimbabwe or West Indies also have a very good chance of making it through. I think the conditions will favor West Indies a bit more because they're used to playing at the Wankhede. They've played a couple of league games here. Zimbabwe is the first game for them in India in this World Cup, though they have had a very good template setup. Their batters, one of them takes it deep, Brian Bennett of course, and the others kind of bat around him. I think they will be exposed at some point because they've been lucky with the way Bennett has batted and how Marumani, Ryan Burl and Raza have come through, but the rest of the batting has not even been exposed. So I would like to see how they tackle the West Indian threat, and the pitch will be a bit tacky. I think the Pacers will have a harder time here because of the dimensions, and the ball will come onto the bat really well. So I'm looking forward to the battle, but I see West Indies winning tomorrow. And that's it for today, and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.